What if, in our polynomial, we have a power of a factor? Right, so not just x plus 2, for example, but x plus 2 squared. Well, we saw back in Unit 2, when we were working on our polynomial basics, that this equation only has 4 solutions. It has a solution where x minus 4 is 0, so x equals 4. It has a solution where x plus 2 equals 0, so x equals negative 2. It has a solution where x minus 7 equals 0, so x equals 7. And it has a solution where x plus 1 equals 0, so x equals negative 1. But those are only 4 roots. It's definitely the case that this polynomial and the polynomial with just these 4 factors are different. How does that compare with what we just said about roots and factors? Well, we can think of the factors with exponents, and therefore the roots that go with those factors, as appearing more than once. We saw before that if r is a root, x minus r is a factor. But if some power of x minus r is a factor, well, r is still a root, but we call that power the multiplicity of r. So this note about m being the largest number this applies to, that means if we have a whole bunch of x minus 5s, we have to put them all together. So if we have a power of x minus r, we call that power the multiplicity of the root r. In our example, we have x minus 4 to the first power, so the root 4 has multiplicity 1. We have x plus 2 to the second power, so the root negative 2 has multiplicity 2. We have x minus 7 to the third power, so the root 7 has multiplicity 3. And we have x plus 1 to the first power again, so the root negative 1 has multiplicity 1. The multiplicity of the root is just the power of the factor. So if we want to write down a polynomial given information about multiplicity, suppose we want a polynomial whose leading coefficient is 2, so we'll throw a 2 at the beginning. And then it has a root 0. That means it has a factor x minus 0, which is just x. Multiplicity 2 means that we're going to take our factor x to the second power. If we have a root negative 1, then we have a factor of x minus negative 1, which is x plus 1. The multiplicity 3 means we'll have x plus 1 to the third power. The root 4 means we'll have a factor of x minus 4. Multiplicity 1 means we'll have a factor of just x minus 4 to the first, which is just x minus 4. And then the root 3 means that we have a factor x minus 3. Multiplicity 2 means we have x minus 3 to the second power. So our leading coefficient is 2, and then our factors are, we've got an x squared, an x plus 1 to the third power, an x minus 4 with no exponent, and an x minus 3 squared. There we go. That's a polynomial with those roots and those multiplicities.